Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome once again to another Enough Already podcast. My name is Fingers Malloy. Tracy L. Connors is my lovely co-host for this show. We have a lot to get to. We got to talk about the New Zealand mosque shooting. We may be talking about Beto.
It's Beto.
Beta.
It's too easy.
We have a lot of things to talk about. But before we do, I want to give you a little update on what's happening with this show. We just started in the last few weeks posting a video version of this podcast on YouTube, and it's not just a slide with the logo and our audio. Tracy has been working very hard with her production team to put together a video podcast. And so you can see both of our smiling, cheery faces over on YouTube as we broadcast the show. And then, of course, you can also catch the show in the usual places where you get podcasts: Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play. Am I missing anything, Tracy?
Oh, there's so many of them anymore, Fingers, and they just keep picking up the show and syndicating it. I haven't even submitted it to them, so God bless.
Yeah.
This is how we have people from all over the world listening to us.
You know, and that's interesting that you bring that up, because when you look at our statistics on the back end where we can track these things, I'm amazed where we're picking up listeners in the Middle East, Europe. It's simply amazing how this show has spread, and a lot of Russians listen to the show, Tracy.
Of course they do. It's because we have respect for their culture.
That's right. So
they're master trolls. Come on.
Yes. So we welcome our listeners in the United States as well as our international listeners. And you can find all of the podcasts over at our website, enoughалready.us. Now, of course, the big story, we're recording this the day before St. Patrick's Day. And it's the New Zealand shooting. And a lot of people are on edge, Tracy. Before we started recording, there was a fear on the University of Michigan campus in Ann Arbor that there was an active shooter, and people were scrambling. The police were called, following someone by the name of Sean McKenzie on Twitter, who had been following it. The 97 won the ticket in Detroit, was tweeting about it, and it turned out, Tracy, after police rushed to the scene, it was just balloons popping.
You're kidding me.
No.
Wow.
So, but people are on edge. What do you know the latest information as far as the death toll in this shooting, or these mosque shootings over in New Zealand? Last I saw 49 people dead. Is that accurate?
That's still my understanding, is that it's 49.
Now, I freely admit I did not read the shooter's manifesto. I stopped reading manifestos after the Unabomber.
Did you
when it comes
read
to
that
these
one?
I got about 3 pages in, and then I got sleepy.
Okay.
But so I must admit I did not read the manifesto. But you, because you like digging into stuff like this, did you read the whole thing? How long is it?
74 pages, including the cover page.
There's a cover page.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
So I'm going to put that up right now, so those of you watching can follow along. There's a cover page with a nice little graphic there.
Mm-hmm.
It's called The Great Replacement Towards a New Society is the title of this. And then he's got a little pie chart looking thing,
mm-hmm.
with all kinds of different things highlighted. So I'll go clockwise around this. Environmentalism, responsible markets, addiction-free community, law and order, ethnic autonomy, protection of cultural heritage, workers' rights, and anti-imperialism. Okay? So it's kind of all over the place right off the bat, right? George Washington, anti-imperialism next to environmentalism and responsible markets and workers' rights. And so that's kind of what this ends up being. it starts with I thought that was a Rudyard Kipling poem or whatever, Rage Against the Dying of the Light or some things like this. And then it just launches all over the place. And so that's why everybody can find something to be upset about reading this.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think...
And that seems to be the goal.
Was the goal, yes. Yeah. And it's rather strange because I didn't read the Unabombers, although that's on my reading list. It is. I hear it cited quite a bit, and he was actually fairly intelligent and had some wacky ideas that people constantly are saying, oh my God, it's coming true. The Unabomber predicted all this, that.
Well, get the audiobook on Audible.
I probably could. Anti-technology
it's read by,
kind of thing.
Yeah, it's read by Christopher Walken.
Awesome.
Makes it interesting.
So anyway, seeing that you haven't read any of this is the layout. It starts with after his little rant about white genocide going on. That's the intro. Then he answering possible questions. So in general, who are you? Okay. And he tells about himself and his background and all this kind of stuff. Why'd you carry out the attack? So it's set up as if a news reporter were asking him all these questions and he's just providing them with the answers, which of course the media completely ignores. And my guess is they just did a Control F on a PC or an Apple F on a Mac and searched for words like, let's see, Trump.
Right.
Oh, there we go. So, are you or are you a supporter of Donald Trump? He says, as a symbol of renewed white identity and common purpose, sure. But as a policymaker and a leader, dear God, no. So what gets reported in the media is, of course, sure, I like him because I believe he's a white supremacist like me, but I don't like his politics at all. And he says in here that he thinks of himself as, I believe it's an eco-fascist. So that's a fun new one for the kids at home. And
well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, it seems to me some of the analysis that I read about this manifesto is here's a cat that is trolling the media and is trying to create more division to where he's hoping that there will be a civil war in the United States. Mm-hmm. And what I find fascinating about this is I agree with you that it seems that the media will take something like this, and if it somehow can fit into their narrative, they'll just take it at face value and they'll be lazy about it. They'll just look for the things in this document that will fit the narrative over at the cable news or the cable narrative network, CNN and the others. And that's it. Where if this seemed to be a left-wing attack, if this was a progressive, there would be much more analysis into, well, what was this person really thinking? Right. What drove this person to do this? We need more analysis. Where if they could run with something like this manifesto, if they see some things in there that will fit the narrative that they're trying to push, they're just going to go with it at face value. And really, we really don't need to dig any more into this. We're just going to report it the way we want to.
No, so it's been wall-to-wall, nonstop. Oh, this is white supremacy's on the rise. You know, he uses the term invaders quite a bit, referring to, you know, he says he went to Europe and saw a ton of migrants there that have been moved, and he saw that as an invasion. And so then Trump talks about invasion yesterday, and it's, oh my God, he's using the same words as the shooter, of course. Which, of course, means that he loves him and he agrees with everything the guy says and all that great stuff. So I was told reliably and breathlessly last night by Don Lemon repeatedly that white supremacy is on the rise all over the world. Which I just, I mean, where do they get these stats? And that's the truth. We have proof of this.
I go back to that ridiculous rally in Washington, D.C. Well, not a rally. It was, I don't know if it was a conference, but I'm sure you remember it, Tracy. I believe Richard Spencer was speaking at this particular event, and there were more media in the room and there were attendees. And I'm supposed to take from that they had an event in public and 50, 75, 100 people attended. And that means that there's this giant white supremacist movement in the United States. Can't you see? I mean, there are local PTA meetings that get more people to show up than this, and as you know, most PTA meetings hardly anyone shows up. So I was at that event, and I brought this up a couple of times. I went to Red State. Must have been 3-4 years ago. I was in Denver. I stayed the last night at a hotel by the airport. There was a conference center there, and a bunch of furries were having the Colorado Furry Convention, and 22,000 furries attended over a 3-day period. Now, would you ever think, after hearing those numbers, would you then make the assumption or the assessment that there's a giant furry movement in our country that is taking? Of course you wouldn't. And that number dwarfs anything that you would see at, like that event in Washington, D.C. But the narrative is out there. There are white supremacists everywhere.
But it's not just the United States. You have to understand now they're pushing this. This is worldwide.
Yes, it's global.
And I was just stunned. I'm like, I can't think of anything that's happened recently that would allow them to say, oh, there's a pattern. I mean, can you think of any attack? The last one I can think of is Andres Breivik or whatever that guy's name was. And that was something like 2010 or 2012. That's
I don't remember that attack.
Counterattack that I can remember. Well, counterattack. It's the last white supremacist attack. He had killed something like 77 Muslims.
Right.
And that's not to, we have to say this kind of stuff. We're not happy that anybody is dead.
Of course not.
It's vile and disgusting to go attack people in their place of worship. And this is an insane person. But then let's not go batshit crazy and start telling the country that all across the world, white supremacy and white supremacist violence is on the rise. And so I hear that, and then the first thing I see, and you'll excuse me because I didn't share this one with you, but I saw this headline: Nigerian Muslim militants kill 120 Christians in 3 weeks. Like, I haven't heard anything about this. Have you?
News to me. Where did you find that?
Breitbart.
Oh, so that'll automatically be dismissed because of the source.
Of course, but do you think they're making up dead people in Nigeria?
Of course not.
No, so this is Muslim militants that they said the recent death toll of Christians in Nigeria has reached 120 in this week's slaughter of more than 50 by Fulani Muslim militants in the Kaduna state of Nigeria. Okay, I didn't see a thing about this on CNN. Did you?
Of course not.
They
doesn't fit the narrative.
52 people in a day.
Doesn't fit the narrative, so it won't be reported. And really, this is one of the many reasons why many people hate the mainstream media.
Right. And
Andrew Breitbart was right when he would say over and over again that the mainstream media, as it is now, needs to be destroyed, and not violently. Don't jump to any conclusions, but. It's this kind of stuff. They're more interested in division. They're more interested in pushing a narrative. Somehow this was Trump's fault. Somehow, even though it was New Zealand, we have to have another discussion about the Second Amendment.
Right.
It is baffling to me how it just lather, rinse, repeat when stuff like this happens. And to me, I don't know, Tracy, when I remember I was on the phone, it may have been with you, when Gabby Giffords got shot. And I thought to myself, oh dear Lord, I really hope this isn't politically motivated. That was my mindset. I feel like when something like this happens, there's a huge part of our population, including the fine folks over at Twitter, who are hoping. and I won't say praying because,
They
don't want to use the P word, but they're hoping that it's politically motivated, and they want to be before the bodies assume room temperature. They want to assess some sort of blame on their political enemies, and it's just a vile, disgusting display every time this seems to happen. That's why I avoid Twitter for some time when something like this happens, because it's just a cesspool.
Well, and I do think it's a natural human tendency when something traumatic and tragic happens that you want to make sense of it. And so the easiest thing to do is just revert back into the world that you live in, the reality, as Scott Adams would call it, the two movies, one screen world that we live in, where you and I look at something like that and we're just like, this is tragic. This is awful. And just leave it at that. And maybe you're interested, like I was, in figuring out, this guy put out something. Maybe I can make some sense of why he did what he did. Then you've got the other side who lives in the Trump Hitler, white supremacists are taking over the world. And so they're going to filter everything through that. And so, you and I know this. Anybody that's not part of that audience over there knows what's going to happen. And so they brace for the fallout, and they man the battle stations, and they go through and pick out any little thing that they can get to pin on the left, too, and say, he's one of yours. I saw that. Oh, okay, he says he's a fascist. There you go. Done. He has nothing to do with us. It's just, can he just be a crazy person that's... Are we not allowed to do that anymore? How long ago was that Chris Rock stand-up? When he said, aren't we just allowed to be crazy anymore? Can't you just have that? And I think he was talking about the Columbine shooters in that instance. But I want to point one more thing out from this manifesto. So one of the reasons that he said that he did this, which is what you kind of mentioned before, he says he did it to create conflict between two ideologies within the United States. Now, this is an Australian guy living on the ownership of firearms in order to further the social, cultural, political, and racial divide within the United States. This conflict over the Second Amendment and the attempted removal of firearms rights will ultimately result in a civil war that will eventually balkanize the U.S. along political, cultural, and most importantly, racial lines. See, I don't think he's right about that. I don't think that the Second Amendment would divide people across racial lines. Cultural lines for sure.
Cultural,
I don't see any reason racial, and that's because that's how you know he's not an American. I don't think it would go down that way. If that's what it was that drove to the eventual kind of taking the cold cultural civil war we're living in to a hot actual war, which I suppose could happen. And if it was over the Second Amendment, I don't think that divide would be a racial one.
No, but I can see that happening, because you're already seeing, and I believe we talked about this last week, there is at least one county in Colorado that's declaring itself a Second Amendment sanctuary county for the Second Amendment, where they're going to push back against any kind of gun regulations by the state of implemented by the state of Colorado, because Colorado is starting to go off the deep end, not nearly as much as California, but it is starting to inch that way, where they're Second Amendment sanctuary county. If it's going to be very interesting, and I think it was Charles C.W. Cook who wrote a piece at National Review talking about, well, if you're really going to do this, let's examine what has to happen. If you're really going to try to repeal the Second Amendment and confiscate guns, there are many people, especially former members of the United States military, our veterans out there, who believe that they have a God-given right to own a firearm and are willing to die to fight for that right. If you believe that you're going to be able to get federal agents to go door to door, or National Guard or any kind of military to go door to door confiscating weapons, and think there's not going to be bloodshed, you're out of your mind. Plus, you're going to have a large section of the military that are going to refuse to even follow orders when it comes to going door to door.
Specifically, right. I don't think I know some members of the military, I'm sure you have friends that have been in it too, and I can't imagine them accepting that order. Go disarm the American populace. Nope.
I'm
Not
out.
gonna happen. Yeah. Well, wait until they tack on, and while you're at it, at their house, can you retrofit it so that it abides by the Green New Deal standards?
I don't know, Tracy. Sometimes I try to sit back and analyze what's going on in American politics today, and I think, wow, the left is biting off so much more than they can chew, and they're coming across as complete lunatics. That this may set back the Democratic Party 20 years, and then part of me feels as though, well, I keep hearing how people like the AOC, Bolshevik Barbie, is likable and that makes it more possible for these policies to be implemented. It's scary. We've talked about it previously, where there are quite a few people in this country who will vote for a candidate just based on if they're likable.
Sure.
It doesn't seem to matter if their policies are destructive. It's, well, you know what? I can have a beer with that person. Or, oh, she's hot. I'll vote for her. It's crazy. I don't know. I've never understood people who are a little bit older and who have voted in several general elections. You could say, oh, you know what? In 1996, I voted for Bill Clinton, and then I voted for Al Gore in 2000. But then I voted for George W. Bush in 2004. But then I went back and I voted for Barack Obama in 2008. And then I went and voted for Mitt Romney. I don't understand how people can switch back and forth like that. And it's, to me, it's mind blowing. It seems like, oh, I like that guy. I have a beer with that guy. He seems to understand me and cares about my problems. What does that have to do with anything?
Well, that's all there is, right? Just care about me, or pretend to care about me, and I'll buy it. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. It's no different than the elections that were held for student council in high school at this point. All the promises, we're going to get a soda machine, or better snacks in the vending machine. I promise you this. We're going to have more free periods and campus privileges where you can leave campus as a senior or a junior. As soon as you have your driver's license, you can leave. That's my promise to you. I'll get it done. And then, of course, nothing ever happens with that kind of stuff. But this is just on a massive level. And now they have the ability to steal from you and I to pay for this crap that they promise other people.
Vote for Sanjaya. That's what it feels like. So part of this is really terrifying, that they're putting a likable face or two or three on some of these whacked out positions like the Green New Deal and this pushback against the Second Amendment where it seems like they're basically trying to classify anything with bullets as an assault weapon.
Yes. We want to ban semi-automatic weapons. I was reading something somewhere. They're talking about New Zealand's gun laws in the wake of this, and they have pretty damn strict gun laws. It's very hard to get a firearm, but they didn't go as far as Australia. So that's the problem. And in Australia, they basically banned any semi-automatic weapon, which means everything but a shotgun, as far as I can tell. And you can even they said he had a semi-automatic shotgun. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's a shotgun where you can put multiple shells into it.
I don't know where you get the unicorns to not only confiscate the 350 million firearms in the United States, but then somehow keep them from being smuggled over the southern border that you don't want patrolled, and creating a huge black market where only criminals have weapons. It's completely mind-boggling to me, but it feels like so much of this is tribalism, and you know what, Republicans like guns, so I'm a Democrat or I'm a liberal, I need to now hate guns because the other team doesn't like guns, or the other team likes guns.
It's people that haven't been around firearms as well. They're scary things. They could go off at any time for any reason. Nobody even needs to touch them.
Right.
Boom. That's known to happen, or at least in
Well,
their minds, they think so.
well, it's easier to buy a gun in Chicago, Tracy, than it is to buy a book. That's what I was told.
I know.
I don't know.
Oh.
It's disturbing, but this manifesto, going back to it quickly, there were several people coming out who read it, who were trying to be intellectually honest, and they kind of painted this guy as almost like an internet troll, probably a right winger, from what if you're reading into it, but throwing names out there like Candace Owens,
Yeah.
and now you're seeing people on Twitter trying to blame her for this. And again, this is it's so ridiculous. And again, this is the whole mindset of, wow, something happened. Boy, I sure hope it was perpetrated by someone who could be characterized as my political enemy, and then I can rush to social media, and this includes the mainstream media, rush to the cameras and the microphones and try to demonize someone who they consider a political enemy. And again, it's just vile.
Right, and they take this so literally, and I understand it's a literal act that happened, but this manifesto should not be taken literally. And so I found some pretty decent tweets about this that I thought kind of explained it a little bit. So this is from a person that calls themselves Michelle Catlin, and their bio is a Dutch trans girl who talks about politics and culture. Then she calls herself a nationalist, a sovereigntist, an HBD, which I don't know what that means. Do you have any idea? Okay.
No.
And capitalism. So I'm sure evil right winger is how we will refer to this person now. So her tweet is he, talking about the shooter, claims to have been inspired by Candace Owens. However, you can clearly tell by his writing that the whole thing is sarcastic and trying to meme her as being too radical for him. He's intentionally trying to push buttons in order to stir violence between the left and the right, and then has the relevant section from the manifesto. This is where he talks about Candace Owens. So he says, is there a particular person that radicalized you most? This is the fictitious questioner that's asking our hero shooter, this jackass. So he says, yes, the person that has influenced me above all was Candace Owens. Each time she spoke, I was stunned by her insights, and her own views helped push me further and further into the belief of violence over meekness. Though I will have to disavow some of her beliefs, the extreme actions she calls for are too much, even for my tastes. Now, anybody that's watched a single Candace Owens video knows that that's bullshit. She is so far away from radical that this is laughable. I mean, in the left's mind, yes, she's dangerous and everything she stands for, because she supports a white supremacist, and so she's a self-loathing black woman, or maybe she's internalized white supremacy.
Well, anyone to the right of Bernie Sanders is an extremist to some people.
So this idea that he's saying that she's the one that like put him over the top, and her belief in violence over meekness influenced him more than anybody. This is so obviously a troll, and they fell for it, and they put her on blast on the internet, and it's just vile and disgusting.
So to sum up this particular part of the manifesto, a white supremacist looks to inspiration from a African American conservative.
Yes,
that's what we're rolling with here.
Mm-hmm.
If we're on the left and in the mainstream media, okay, makes sense.
It doesn't have to make sense.
Again,
their feelings don't care about your facts, fingers. Their feelings do not care about your facts.
Oh, it's funny you bring that up, and we weren't going to talk about it, but you got a new book this week.
I did.
Delivered to you. Tell us a little bit about it.
Here it be. It's Woke, A Guide to Social Justice by my favorite Twitter personality, Tatiana McGrath. And as you can see, I took lots of notes. And I won't spoil it for you because you're actually going to read this book.
It's supposed to be delivered to me from Great
England.
Britain. Yeah, next weekend. So I'm looking forward to it. but it's a page turner. It's funny.
It's funny, and it's incredibly well written. Actually, I was impressed by the prose.
For those who don't know who our favorite internet troll is, can you tell people a little bit about her?
Oh God. Well, I'm not entirely sure it's a her.
Yep, you're right. My fault.
Yes. Well, I don't know how she would decide to be gendered, and I don't want to misgender her because that's not the way that we should roll with this. But I will throw up her Twitter feed right now for the whole world to see. So this is Miss Tatiana McGrath, and she has really important things to say. Honestly,
What's her bio?
For you. Her bio is activist, healer, radical intersectionalist poet, selfless and brave. Buy my book. Oh man. So, all right. Of course, now I can't find anything that stands out above another. But it's a parody account that just takes woke to the ultimate level. Like, you can't get more woke than Tatiana McGrath. It's just a sheer impossibility. She can find white supremacy hiding under every rock. There's internalized misogyny coming from any woman that dares speak out against her. And she just nails everything so perfectly. It's the best parody account I've ever seen, and she holds that through the entire book too. Never breaks the character.
What's amazing about this parody account is it's not very old.
No,
right?
It's only about a year old. Mm-hmm.
It's only about a year old, and in a year's time, she's been able to get quite a following, and to the point where she could write this book, and she was interviewed by Playboy and posed.
No, it was
Penthouse. Penthouse, yeah, not Playboy. Penthouse, and they took they took crude cutouts of her head, and I don't even want to call it photoshopped. Just basically they did a cut and paste job with her head on models' bodies. The whole thing is awesome. Hilarious.
So here's a pretty good sample tweet. So somebody had sent her a screen cap that says they tried to submit a review for the book. And the review was, "I'm sorry, but I haven't yet brought myself to read this book because of the way it was aggressively shoved through my letterbox by a post-man," all caps man. "It still reeks of testosterone, so I'm leaving it in the organary to air out." That's got to be some British thing. "To air for a few days. I've given it 5 stars because I agree with every word on the dust jacket." And so Amazon wouldn't post the review. So Tatiana's response was, "One of my disciples got in touch with me to say that a misogynist at Amazon won't accept her 5-star review of my book. They fear my influence. They seek to curb my power. Please protest by buying multiple copies and sending them to literally everyone you know." It's excellent. So they're really funny chapters and interspersed with ridiculous slam poetry.
Oh, of course. Well, I didn't mean to get us sidetracked by talking about woke, but I thought I would bring that up, because we're talking about something very serious with the New Zealand mosque shootings, and I'll say it. My thoughts and prayers go out to the victims and their families. I know that we're not allowed to say that anymore. I'm always amazed that people criticize folks. Bill O'Reilly calls them the folks, Tracy. Folks for saying that they're sending their thoughts and prayers because their thoughts and prayers mean nothing.
Right.
These are the same people that crammed awareness ribbons down our throats.
Yes.
As if that was doing something. Yes.
We had them. Well, I think they wore something different for Me Too or Time's Up or whatever. They like the flare look. So they all work at TGI Fridays on the weekends.
Yes. Going out in public with pussy hats, Tracy. Now you're really doing something.
Of course.
There's nothing empty in that.
They can't wear those anymore, though. They decided to disband that whole thing.
Oh, because why is that? Because we're offending transgenders?
Yep.
Fair enough. Well, so there was this shooting, and the manifesto comes out, and he mentions people like Candace Owens and PewDiePie.
That I believe that happened. So he live streamed the shooting.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
On Facebook, and I guess he said something. There's some inside thing with PewDiePie and his followers where they say, remember, lads, to subscribe to PewDiePie on YouTube. So he said that before going in and starting the massacre.
And so, we're seeing this, and now we have in New York, there was I don't know if you call it a memorial service, or there was, I guess it was a memorial service, and Chelsea Clinton was there.
Yes. To
recognize the victims of this terrorist attack, and she was confronted by a lefty who was upset with Chelsea Clinton's criticism of Congresswoman Omar's remarks, and how she was pushing back against what she rightly considered anti-Semitic comments. And this protester, I don't know what you would consider this person, was trying to accuse Chelsea Clinton of hate speech. Do you have the audio of that?
After all that you have done and all this homophobia that you have sowed.
I'm so sorry. Well, certainly it was never my intention. I do believe words matter. I believe we have to show
We do matter. And this right here is the result of a massacre stoked by people like you and the words that you have put out into the world. And I want you to know that, and I want you to feel that deep inside. 49 people died because of the rhetoric that you put out there. I don't think.
What does "I'm sorry you feel that way" mean? What does that mean?
These people are fucking lunatics.
Yes. Did you hear that?
Yes. Anytime I hear someone say that Facebook or social media, or worse, the United States government needs to have someone regulating what is and what isn't hate speech, I cringe, because it may be some lunatic. Like,
it will be some lunatic like this. Because you and I can't speak for you, but I will speak for myself. I don't believe there is such a thing.
No.
So I could not police it effectively.
These people think that Chelsea Clinton is a hate speech merchant.
Well, and
Chelsea freaking Clinton.
Her saying that it's inappropriate to say anti-Semitic remarks as a member of Congress somehow led to this massacre. I mean, these two things have absolutely nothing to do with each other. But this woman is so irate. I saw somewhere else where she was talking about it. And she's like, I was planning on shouting that out when she was talking, and then it just happened that I ran into her. And I didn't know it was going to be filmed or anything like that. But I planned to say something to her regardless.
Shit.
So she was going to interrupt her speaking and yell this stuff because that's how passionately she felt about this.
Oh, I didn't know it was going to be filmed. Horse shit. I had no idea there'd be a camera nearby.
Did you check out her T-shirt?
Oh, no.
It says college for all, Medicare for all, jobs for all, justice for all. I bet you her definition of justice and ours are quite different.
Well, I'm getting a look at what she considers hate speech. And I can only imagine what justice for all is.
Well, and assigning responsibility to people that had absolutely nothing to do with something kind of undermines justice, does it not?
Freaking crazy. And again, it terrifies me that, well, it terrifies me that that person votes, but B, that a candidate that appeals to someone like that would have any kind of political power whatsoever, let alone may become president of the United States someday.
Well, we're on that path.
Freaking loon. Chelsea Clinton. Chelsea Clinton spreads hate speech. I don't know what to do with that. I am defending Chelsea Clinton. But this is what she honestly. It's just a shame that she's out in public and not part of the Clinton Foundation anymore.
It's true.
Having to be seen in public and actually talk to the normals out there. It's a heavy burden for her.
I'm sorry, did you say talk to the normals?
Oh, yeah. My bad.
What we witnessed just now was not normal.
Well, no, it's not. But but I can't. I didn't think there'd be a camera. Jesus, they all lie. All these social justice warriors lie through their teeth every chance they can when it comes to pushing a narrative.
I just don't understand. And if I were in her position, I would say, can you please explain to me how these two things are connected?
Oh, you would even go that far? I would say piss off. Get out of my face, you lunatic.
Yeah.
Instead of, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you feel that way. Oh, words do mean things. And then you got another lunatic jumping in. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well.
Loons. Well,
the world has gone crazy.
The world has gone crazy. And you know what else the world is going crazy for? Beto.
Oh, yeah?
Beto? Apparently, he ran against Ted Cruz and lost in 2016. And he swore up and down he was not going to run for president.
Right.
Tracy. Well, you know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
You make the promise that you aren't running, and then you run. I mean,
of course.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Cory Booker make that same promise that he wasn't going to run?
Oh, Elizabeth Warren did too. And somebody had a whole montage of all of them saying, I'm not running, 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 I'm not running. And it ended with Hillary saying, I'm not running.
Yeah, I'm still not ruling Hillary out. And she said she's not running this time around. These people, first of all, I think you're sick if you're running for office. I'm sorry. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't know why anyone would want to be president of the United States. But they get addicted to campaigning. And especially if you're someone like Beto, and it was 95%, 98% positive press. You're surrounded by adoring supporters, and you get having the mainstream media to suck on your ass for the entire campaign. I could see where that would be addicting if you are an egotistical, crazy lunatic.
Well, and he's also unemployed now, so he's got nothing else to do, right?
Oh, I thought he didn't run for his seat at the same time.
No, I don't think so. You can Google that for us.
I will.
I thought he was out. No, because I remember reading articles about him, and it's like, well, since he doesn't have a job anymore, he'll have a lot of time to think about whether or not to run, and that's a huge advantage. And it's a big advantage that he doesn't have a job to hold him back from.
Yep, you're right.
He wants to do. Thank you.
Well, I just assumed that he would either run against John Cornyn in Texas, or he would just slide right into a job at CNN. Because I don't think he is, from everything I've been told about him, he appeals more, and it's almost ridiculous to say because it doesn't feel like there are any centrist Democrats anymore. I mean, he's a lefty, but it's like he tries to at least play a little bit to the center. which isn't acceptable nowadays.
No.
Especially on something like, if you wanted a gig on MSNBC, there would be people up in arms if he shows any right leanings whatsoever, that they would be giving him a show. So, but I thought for sure he would slide right into some media gig or lobby, for Christ's sake. This is what's so mind-boggling to me. And what is so crazy about the system today is he was in Congress long enough to where he would make an effective lobbyist for someone. Sure. And really clean up. But
well, did you ever think that maybe he's stupid?
Well, the other thing too is, isn't his wife, is she a billionaire or close to it? I mean, she's Scrooge McDucking it, isn't she?
Yeah, I think she's pretty rich.
Like bathing in gold coins and but she's pretty rich, so maybe money doesn't mean that much to the guy because he already has a ton of it. So maybe a lobbying job. Oh, who needs that? Right. There's a greater calling.
Yes. So you want to see his announcement video?
Is it, I'm gonna get me a beer?
No, but it's up there though.
Sure, go ahead and play it.
It is, and take special note of the arm movement.
I are happy to share with you that I'm running to serve you as the next president of the United States of America. This is a defining moment of truth for this country and for every single one of us. The challenges that we face right now, the interconnected crises in our economy, our democracy, and our climate have never been greater, and they will either consume us or they will afford us the greatest opportunity to unleash the genius of the United States of America. In other words, this moment of peril produces perhaps the greatest moment of promise for this country and for everyone inside of it. We can begin by fixing our democracy and ensuring that our government works for everyone and not just for corporations. We can invest in the dignity of those who work and those who seek to work. We can ensure that every single American can see a doctor and be well enough to live to their full potential. And all of us, wherever you live, can acknowledge that if immigration is a problem, it's the best possible problem for this country to have, and we should...
Sorry, he timed out there. I think that you've heard enough, right?
First of all, I could see where people compare him to Barack Obama, because the first half of that, there were a lot of words coming out of his face, but he wasn't saying anything.
Right.
O'Rourke.
Well, and the gestures is what really kills me. And
yeah.
I went back and I found some old footage of him, and I should have loaded this up for everybody, so maybe I can pull it up while we're chatting. But I found on C-SPAN's site, they had, you just go to C-SPAN and then search for somebody by name, and it'll pull up every video of them. So I found videos of him from his first years in Congress. Guess what he doesn't do? Any of this. None of it. He's standing at the podium. His hands are there. That's it.
So the handler said you're too wooden. You come across like Al Gore. You're Al Gore who skateboards, essentially, is what they told him. So he's starting to move his hands around like he's playing Fruit Ninja.
Yes. That was Kasich, wasn't it?
Yeah, Kasich. It's Kasich 2.0.
Oh, great.
But I mean, let's face it. This guy is essentially, he's Wendy Davis with less testosterone.
Yes.
I mean, the whole, what did he say about this generation? We're in this is the crisis that is facing us it's unprecedented or something like that. I'm paraphrasing as if it always cracks me up that so many times you will hear a politician or you'll see stories in the media and they will say this particular problem is unprecedented, or the challenges we face today are unlike anything we've ever
faced
seen.
before.
Right. And we're like, wow. World War II,
Right.
that wasn't a challenge. The
Great
Cold
Depression.
War, the Great Depression, World War One. Again, going back to what we were talking about earlier. Yeah. Let us pray. Do people buy this shit?
Apparently, I mean, we hear it over and over and over again, right?
Yes.
It never seems to die. It's just like, oh my God, really? It's always the worst of times.
And it's so irresponsible. You've got a bunch of kids who are terrified, going to school every day thinking that the planet is going to die in 10 years because of this rhetoric. And what I find comical about it is these are the same people that accuse Republicans of promoting the politics of fear.
Right.
Half of their platform is fear-mongering. The planet is going to be destroyed within 10 years. If you are a black person, you can't go outside without worrying about a cop just randomly shooting you. I get that fear is a great motivator, but I mean, my God, you are terrifying young people with this kind of rhetoric. I mean, Al Gore claimed what was it, Miami or Manhattan was going to be underwater. Manhattan. What was it, by 2010 or something, if we didn't do something about climate change?
I think it might have been a little bit later, but still, the time has passed.
And it doesn't happen. And we continue to listen to these people, and the same people who, he's talking about how healthcare needs to be reformed. Democrats have no right, in my mind, to even talk about healthcare reform after what they pulled with Obamacare.
No.
And what's disgusting to me is Republicans have been so bad at pushing back against their messaging. It should be a non-starter. Be like, you guys screwed this up.
Yeah.
Now you sit back and let the adults fix it.
Nope. They won't do that. They won't do that.
Because the dirty little secret is Republicans like control too, and they like government programs as much as Democrats do, as long as they're the ones controlling it.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much. Here, I found a flashback Beto video for everybody.
Oh, goody.
So
Without
this
objection,
came
the gentleman from
from,
Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are many details yet to define as we bring our laws in line with our values in the coming debate over immigration reform. But I caution my colleagues against using additional enforcement and security measures as a condition and a pretext to delay much-needed reform. While we should always seek to improve the security of this country in ways that are consistent.
That's enough of him. I can't take any more.
I'm getting really sick and tired of starting off the immigration debate from a dishonest launch point, and that it's lumping illegal immigration with legal immigration together into this soup, where if you are against illegal immigration, then you're against all immigration. And you're probably against immigration in general because you don't like brown people, and you're a white redneck in the Midwest who's wearing a "Make America Great Again" hat. It's stunning and amazing to me that we've gone in just a short period of time from the leader of the Democratic Party in Barack Obama saying we are a nation of law immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws, to having a presidential candidate from Texas saying, if I were president, I would tear down existing border fences.
Yes.
Walls
it's kill people. Fingers.
They're
aware of that.
I had no idea.
Walls are just as dangerous as handguns. See, walls will just fall on people and crush them. It happens every day.
Well,
And
I'm
if you
going to have
deny that,
to.
You're denying my lived reality.
Our community has a pool, and it's surrounded by a wall. I'm going to have to, after we're done recording this, run down there and tear down that pool wall because I don't want to see anyone killed. But it's amazing to me that they have been able to change the conversation, and not in such a short period of time, to where we're actually having a debate whether we should even have a border at all.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are just for the free flow of anyone to come over the border and we should tear down border fences, then why have a border at all?
Why have a country? You've heard them chanting that, right? At their little rallies. I can't remember the rhyme, but it's something no USA at all.
Yeah.
No border, no wall, no USA at all.
That's what it is.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's break up. I'm good with that. You guys take the debt because you ran it up.
It's just a shame. I mean, we've talked about it on previous shows where you're having people who voted for this garbage in states like California leave, and then they travel, and move to states like Colorado and Nevada and vote for the same jerk-offs that implemented the crazy policies that ran them out of California to begin with. And
they don't connect the two.
It's nuts.
They seem incapable of making logical connections. Like cause and effect is a foreign concept to them. It's the same problem that girl had that was up in Chelsea's face. She doesn't understand cause and effect at all. Oh, Chelsea Clinton denounced Omar, or Representative Omar, for saying anti-Semitic things, and that was the butterfly effect that you see happen. It just takes a couple months, and then on the other side of the world, a young man was inspired by that to go and kill a bunch of people. You don't follow that?
Well, the funny thing is that replace Candace Owens' name with Chelsea Clinton's, and you would see a reaction from the mainstream media, something to the effect of, "Oh, how ridiculous! We all know that Chelsea Clinton had nothing to do with this. It's absolutely ridiculous how
they wouldn't have mentioned it. Are you kidding?
Of course not. Of course not.
It wouldn't come up. They don't do a search for those kind of names when something like that comes out. You know, that's the very first thing that any of them did in those newsrooms.
Of course.
Find the word Trump. Okay, there it is. We
knew
it.
Look, there was an attack, must have been 6 or 7 years ago. I can't remember which one. And they did a search, and originally they found the person's name. The name popped up, and it wasn't the same person, but that person had the same name who was in a Tea Party.
That's James Holmes.
Okay.
That was the Aurora, Colorado theater shooting.
Latched onto that, tried to run with that for a little while, and we screwed up.
Yeah.
I'm loving this whole Covington case where you're seeing CNN, sue the Washington Post, the CNN, maybe going after Kathy Griffin and Bill Maher, and it's delicious. It's delightful.
Yeah.
I'm loving every minute of it. If there's a possibility that it will, and it won't. I'm trying to be an optimist, but if it could change some policy in newsrooms around the country, not to just run with something because it was on the internets. I mean, they did everything that they accuse these fake news sites of doing. They just saw something on the internet and they just ran with it.
Yeah.
Didn't look for anything at all. And even when it started to come in that the narrative that they were pushing to begin with about these Covington Catholic kids, there was evidence that it wasn't how these activists were claiming it went down. It didn't matter. They still were reporting it the way they wanted it to because it fit their narrative. And the truth didn't. And they kept reporting it as if those kids were in the wrong.
No, and Bill Maher is the most egregious because he was a full week later on his show. That happened over a weekend. His show airs on Friday.
Yeah.
That had all pretty much been resolved by the following week. Everybody knew that wanted to know what the hell went on, and he went on air that Friday and repeated the same story that had been debunked 100 times over.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think he did that because it pushed the proper narrative, or it's just lazy comedy? I already thought of some jokes, and boy,
No, I would imagine it's possible that nobody on his staff knew the truth had come out. Because the deal is, once they get the story out there and it's repeated all over the place, if you don't go back yourself and check to see if there's any updates or anything like that, you're just going to live with the original story.
Right.
So it's entirely possible they did not know. I mean, it's pathetic and it's reprehensible that they didn't know.
Well, yeah. And speaking of things that are reprehensible, that stories that aren't being covered by the mainstream media, there was some audio of Andrew Yang that we wanted to talk about. Now, refresh my memory. Andrew Yang is running for president.
Yes.
Why should Andrew Yang be running for president again? What is his background?
I believe he's a tech guy.
He's a tech guy.
Serial entrepreneur.
Look, the last two presidential elections have thrown out the window the idea that a president needs experience. Political experience. I mean, Barack Obama, what did he announced that he was running for president after being in the United States Senate for what, 6 months?
And who is going to be the boogie?
Yep. Sorry about that. Yes.
That's okay. So, not exactly the most experienced cat. And then you have, Donald Trump, experience in the private sector, but no experience in any government position whatsoever. So it doesn't really matter anymore. Experience doesn't matter. So you got a tech guy running, and Andrew Yang, Asian. He makes these comments. Where were these comments made?
It's hard to tell, Fingers. I don't really know. He's standing in front of a backdrop where it says something like "glance at U.S. politics in Asian Americans" or something like this, and then it looks. I don't know if that's Chinese. I guess it's Chinese.
Well, the reason why I bring up
behind him
that he's Asian, and you could probably guess it by the last name Yang, are the remarks that he makes regarding white people. Go ahead and roll that video, Tracy.
All right, here we go.
The boogeyman of the next 10 to 20 years, who's going to be the great rival to the United States in the eyes of American society? China, that's right. And so what do you think the attitude is going to be over time for the shrinking, insecure white majority that's losing their jobs for, let's say, Chinese Americans or Asian Americans? I personally said to a group at Harvard, I think we're one generation away from falling into the same camps as the Jews who were attacked in a synagogue in Pittsburgh, just a couple of months ago. It's like we're probably one generation away from Americans shooting up a bunch of Asians saying, damn the Chinese because there's a giant Cold War or even more with China. That is the great danger that I fear that my children are going to grow up in.
And thank you for Hotep Jesus for finding that. I mean,
well, part of me thinks, okay, the mainstream media isn't going to talk about this because, who is Andrew Yang? Is he even going to be a player in the primaries? You said that, has he raised enough money?
Yes.
He's
getting into the debate.
He'll get into the debate. So if he is if he's going to have a microphone at the debate, if he's going to have a podium, why isn't this being reported?
Well,
it's ridiculous. He thinks
I don't
that,
think they see him as a threat yet, but believe me, if they do, which could possibly happen, he was picking up some traction in the memescape, right? So a lot of the Trump guys had joined what they called the Yang Gang, and they were memeing him into the presidency again. So he's got, his big thing is the universal basic income that we kind of talked about, which we're calling a freedom dividend, mind you. Not universal basic income. Freedom dividend polls.
It's a smart rebrand.
It is. It is. I'll give him that. And so then that video came out, and it was just like, we're done with him now. We're done. He's just like everybody else. This identitarian garbage surfaces. And it's like, why do you got to do that, dude? Every other Democrat on that stage is saying the exact same thing. And you had to go there and say, oh, they're coming for the Asians. And then my question was, this is the guy that's pushing UBI because the robots are coming to take everybody's jobs. So in your world, Mr. Yang, shouldn't everybody whose job's being taken turn against the robots and not against the Asians? Am I wrong, Fingers? Does that not make sense?
No, it does make sense.
It's the entire reason for the universal basic income that he wants. But he's got, on the front page of his site, you can see that he's got a little tracker that shows how many individual donations they've gotten. And it's him with the little podium. Here we go. He's moving all along. His new goal is 200,000 individual donations. So he's up to 72,759.
It's moving right now. It reminds me of the yodeling game on The Price is Right.
But I wanted to show you something, and this is just so we make sure that he hits all of the stereotypical Asian, the Asian stereotypes. Here's his policy page, okay? He's got his big three, which is the universal basic income, Medicare for all, and human-centered capitalism, which I haven't read about yet, but I can't wait to dig into that. I did read his UBI. Here's the rest of his platform. Look at this. I was like, this guy had a tiger mom. He did way too much friggin' homework.
Well, I mean, describe to the people who aren't watching the podcast what you're seeing. So I'm having a hard time. There's so much stuff here. I'm having a hard time reading it.
It's unbelievable. So here, I'll just do maybe 15 of the probably 100 different things that seem to be linked off of here on his policies. So he's got the freedom dividend. And these all have hyperlinks, so you can go read more in detail. Freedom dividend, combat climate change, reduce mass incarceration, opioid crisis, LGBTQ rights, foreign policy, first principles, gun safety, paid family leave, support for the arts, control the cost of higher education, pathway to citizenship, parenthetically Fingers, make them earn it. Southern border security, support the DREAM Act, right to privacy, abortion and contraception, campaign finance reform, fight for equal pay. American Journalism Fellows, who knows what the hell that means? News and Information Ombudsman, which I want to come back to in a second. NCAA athletes should be paid. Every cop gets a camera. My nuclear launch decisions. Local Journalism Fund. American Exchange Program. It just goes on. Free marriage counseling for all, Fingers.
Oh, isn't that delightful?
Yes. The American Mall Act. What?
Where do they think all this money's coming up? What does it have at the bottom of the site? And all this will be paid for by Bill Gates.
No, Fingers. Actually, we'll jump into this for a second. He wants a value-added tax. That's how he's going to pay for his universal basic income. But he also seems to be a big proponent for the VAT tax because they have these things in Europe. And if you don't know what a VAT tax is, it's an acronym for value-added tax. So at every step along the manufacturing process for a product, there's a tax levied on it. And he thinks this will generate enough income, enough revenue to the government that they can pay for all this crap. So they get to be outrageous. There's like 15, 20% at every level of production. So say that we're making a car. The tires are going to be taxed when they go from the tire manufacturer to the auto manufacturer. All the other pieces that are coming into that vehicle are taxed from one to the other, one supplier to the next. Then when the entire vehicle's done, you pay a value-added tax when you buy it. So they're just finding another way to vacuum up more money, but they think this is going to make corporations pay their fair share. And it's like, no, it's not. It's really not. They're not going to. They're going to pass along the cost to consumers. So your new $1,000 a month that everybody gets on your universal basic income, gone. Prices are going to go through the damn roof. But he can buy people off with this. It's the same thing I was saying earlier. It's like getting a new soda machine in the cafeteria. We're going to have better snacks. It's so juvenile. But we're going to have value-added tax. It's fine. That's fine. But here's the one that I find to be kind of terrifying. So we were talking about the fake news and all this stuff and, hate speech police and such. Well, Andrew Yang thinks there should be a news and information ombudsman. So here's the policy brief on this one. Fake news is a rampant problem. Online media market incentives reward clickbait and controversy, even as our social media feeds send us more and more outrageous stories to incite a reaction. The rewards for publishing inflammatory content are high, with no real penalty. At the extreme end, those who wish to misinform the American public can do so with little fear of repercussions. Washington Post, CNN. The lack of trusted news increasingly isolates us in information silos that hurt our democracy. So we must introduce both a means to investigate and punish those who are seeking to misinform the American public. If enough citizens complain about a particular source of information and news is demonstrably fake, there should be penalties.
Oh, piss off.
I will appoint a new news and information ombudsman with the power to fine egregious corporate offenders. One of the main purposes of the ombudsman will be to identify sources of spurious information that are associated with foreign nationals. The ombudsman will work with social media companies to identify fraudulent accounts and disable and punish responsible parties. The ombudsman will be part of the Federal Communications Commission. So we're going to have a national fake news czar.
And gee, I wonder who they would go after. You have a major political party who has said that they don't want their debates on Fox News.
Right.
And I'm not here to defend Fox News. I mean, I think we all know where Fox News is coming from. And I know that going in when I watch Fox News. I don't watch Fox News. But I don't want someone from the government telling me what they think is fake news.
Right.
And it'll be, oh, you know what? The ombudsman just fined Fox News a staggering $100 million because Sean Hannity said something. And, oh, by the way, next week, it's rumored that they are going to shut down the Daily Caller. It'll be all that. It'll be ridiculous. Fox News is biased. Absolutely. CNN is biased. MSNBC is biased. Everybody knows this going in. And unfortunately, media is getting to the point where they are playing to what they believe is their audience, and people are just sinking further and further into their own little media bubble world. And they're only getting their news from sources that share their worldview. And it's only going to get worse. But let's not pretend that, oh, Fox News is so evil because they're biased. But, MSNBC, CNN, they're shooting it straight.
No, we were just talking about the Covington case. So those guys would have gotten reported to the ombudsman and fined and shut down?
Of course not.
Well, it doesn't say he wants to shut them down. He just says there should be penalties. But I love this. This sounds like a singular person, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't say like a team of them. This person will be so overburdened by things because they'll get the social media crews going, like the Stop Rush guys and all that, where it's like 10 people that make it look like there are 10,000 of them. And they'll just be dinging this person all day long. It's such a friggin' joke of an idea. We need to police the news to make sure that only the good stuff gets out. Here, let's watch John Brennan talking on MSNBC. That seems legit. There's nothing to worry about with that. He's a straight shooter. He only lied to Congress. He only spied on the Senate Intelligence Committee. What could possibly go wrong? He is the pinnacle of veracity in news.
Keith Olbermann today was named media czar by President Yang.
No, I think it should
I can
be
see
Brian
it now.
Stelter. You know he wants this job. I wonder if he knows about it. I should tweet him and say, did you know that Andrew Yang is looking for an ombudsman?
Well, and with that, Tracy, we have been talking for a long time. We're an hour and 15 minutes in.
All right.
So maybe we should call it a day. Hey, remember, you can always catch the Enough Already podcast on Stitcher, SoundCloud, TuneIn, iTunes. And it's really important, if you could do us a solid, if you like the show, spread it around. And if you don't like the show, if you don't like us, send it to people you hate. And if you could go ahead and leave us a review on iTunes, that helps out a lot as far as getting it the attention that we would like it to get on iTunes, get it on that noteworthy list. And then, of course, you can catch the Enough Already podcast on YouTube, and you could see our cheerful faces there and on BitChute. Final thoughts, Tracy?
I'm going to see if I can apply to be this ombudsman person.
You look into that.
I might let him slide for his remarks about me potentially snapping and killing a bunch of Asians in like 10 years because they took our jabs.
More on that and Tracy filling out her application over at enoughalready.us. Well, she's Tracy. I'm Fingers. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with an all-new Enough Already.